So, Rabbi Mark Kram, welcome. I'm so happy to share this moment with you. And, it's funny because you are the first one who is going to be kicking off our series of speaking and having conversations with the rabbis of Beth Or throughout our 40 years of our history and in anticipation of our 40th celebration coming up next month. And so you get to kick us off. And of course, you're the one that we all see all the time. So we are going to have to figure out some great questions to dig in and talk to you about, maybe things that we don't know about you, and highlight some things that can bring light to Beth Or, to our community, and maybe even to our future. So Mark, should we call you Rabbi Mark? Do you like Rabbi Kram?
I never lost my first name when I went to rabbinical school.
Nice. You were my immediate predecessor. I followed you, and I seem to be following you all over the place because we both started many years ago at Hillel, where you were the executive director and rabbi, and then you left, and then I came in some years later as the chaplain on campus and then the assistant director. So, and then when this came up and you, my connection to Beth Or came because of you and Mindy. When you came to me as I was completing my ordination process, and you said, knocked on my door, let's have lunch and let's talk about you coming here. So you were the one who
Good
introduced.
choice. One of the best things I did for Beth Or.
Yeah, I love that. But let's go back to your tenure at Beth Or. As there have been a number of rabbis. I think I'm the sixth one, so you, I guess, are the fifth one. What year did you begin your time at Beth Or?
So it was 2008.
How many years were you at Beth Or?
9.5. So I had the longest tenure short of Rami.
Wow.
But
I
was the first.
I thought it was 7.
Yeah, I was the first part-time rabbi there. As everybody who followed me was as well. And that was a big change for the temple. In other words, what do you do going from a full-time rabbi to part-time rabbi? And that was a big change.
How so? Tell me about that.
Well, I think that expectations had to be adjusted. And and it wasn't until 5 years into my being part-time / full-time at Beth Or, where I had to take another position in order to get health insurance. So I doubled up and I worked for AJC my last 4 years of my 9 with Beth Or. But it wasn't a conflict, but it added a benefit because, the Beth Or thing didn't come with benefits. But I was able to be very fulfilling as a rabbi at Beth Or, and also to round off my full-time work life, working with AJC. And I think I will tell you, both Mindy and my experiences at Beth Or, I never wanted to be a congregational rabbi. That's how I came into HUC and so forth, Hebrew Union College, and never was looking forward to that. And that's why I jumped into Hillel. And I was a campus director on 2 campuses for 9 years. And then I was a state director of all of Hillel in Florida for 11 years. Because, I had an experience at Beth Am. I was there for 5 years as associate. But Beth Or's experience of the lovely people that are attracted and still attracted to Beth Or, and the wonderful down-to-earthness of it was really resonated with both of us. And we found our experience together, and hers is as important as mine, is as so refreshing. and so delightful. And to find a community of real sincere learners that were open to all sorts of Jewish learning on every level. And as a teacher, as a rabbi is, we love that, and I love that in all the different ways we taught.
Did that change your perception of what you thought a pulpit rabbi or position would be?
Yeah, I would say the experience at Beth Or was on the other spectrum of the scale of being a rabbi at Beth Am. And being a rabbi at Beth Am was great because my kids were there. They were in the school. I was able to bar and bat mitzvah all my kids there, and it worked out great. It was a really powerful experience. But this was a very different, and I'll call it a sweet experience. And it was very, very different. And
I want to get into some of the meat of that, but before we do that, I want to just go back from when you first started at Beth Or. Who was your predecessor?
So Rebecca Lillian was,
Mhm.
and she left town, so I didn't have the benefit of really staying all that connected to her, but we were connected.
Mhm.
And she was terrific as a colleague and so forth. Um, and but it was really kind of a standalone experience because, as Robyn, that coming from Hillel, where you really have to be involved in outreach and you have to do so much outside of the building, and not everything happens in the building. You're a different kind of rabbi when you come from Hillel. And that's one of the reasons that Mindy, we were driving around in the car and said, gosh, who could follow? And Mindy goes, Robyn. And we both went, oh my God,
Aw.
because of the
All right,
similarity.
enough of me. Let's get back to you because I really want to know, like, how did you find Beth Or? Because before you told me about Beth Or and said, I didn't even know Beth Or. I had never set foot in Beth Or.
Correct.
Didn't know the community. I was also pleasantly surprised and like just blown away by their welcoming nature. But like, how did you arrive at Beth Or? Did you know Rebecca beforehand? Did you know the
No,
community?
so that's Michael Henry's fault.
Oh,
Michael
nice. There's
Vicky.
always someone, right?
Yeah, because we had a connection with them, a longtime connection with them,
Mhm.
and he recommended it, and it was a really good suggestion.
Nice.
Yeah, but when I came to Beth Or, it was at a kind of a contracting time, and so we asked the question about, how do we, I brought my business background, and we did some strategic planning and thinking at that time, and the community decided, we looked at what the critical issues were to survive, as I do with my other work as coaching and so forth. And we said, first issue is really funding and having the money to continue. And the
Some things
community,
don't change, right?
yeah, for not-for-profits, it never changes. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm still working with them today, is that, as a volunteer, but that was really an issue. But the community decided that they would do a campaign, which I was experienced, directing and conducting and so forth. And we all did it together. And, thankfully, the Bridge to the Future campaign was a success and still helps sustain Beth Or today.
So that is a big legacy of yours that, we are still reaping the benefits from. Tell me a little bit about how that came. You told me how that came to be, but how that process over, it was unfolding and how you were able to get really the breadth of our community involved in a fundraising campaign to have, I think you had 100% participation and
Yeah,
that
very close.
the residuals are still being felt today.
Exactly. So we together looked at the critical issues for Beth Or, and I always say that there's the top three critical issues for any not-for-profit: fundraising, fundraising, and fundraising.
I remember that.
And if you have no problem fundraising, if you have the funds, you have no problems as a not-for-profit, and a synagogue is a not-for-profit. So we then address the issue: do we want to continue? And the leadership, Mike Newman was the president at the time, and we had a community meeting and said, look, we have a choice. We can continue or we can stop. And the community decided to continue. And so with strength, Ellen Siegel and a whole host of great people that are also on the call today took part in it. We had a committee of about a dozen people, and we went member to member, and we presented the case of why it was important that Beth Or continue, and people agreed.
Amazing. I remember one of our first meeting that I had that same conversation. Where are we at? And are we going to roll up our sleeves and make this happen? Or are we going to create kind of like a sacred ending? And again, everybody, I think it's reflective of the community that we both are so connected with, that it was the spirit to do whatever we need to do to move forward. And we're also in this transitional period too.
Sure.
We'll put that on hold for a moment, because I want to go back to like when you, during your tenure here, during your 9 years, what was happening in the world in which we live, and how did that impact your rabbinate?
So it was a difficult time because 2008 was the financial crisis. And it lasted and reverberated for several years beyond that. And so we were trying to continue with comforting people, as well as raising funds during a very, very difficult and traumatized time for the country. But what we continued with were, when I started, we had about 7 or 8 bar bat mitzvahs every year. And those continued for many years. And the learning opportunities and so forth. I don't know. I think that people were affected by the crisis, but not as much as the general community. Some were, and they needed support. And this community is so special that it gets behind people and it supports people, and the community is really, that's why I credit Rami and all of my predecessors and really the community to stay together and to support each other, and it's nonstop. We also we had a trip to Israel.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, we took about, I don't know, 20 people to Israel, and we had the greatest time, and that was really an important moment, and some of the fond memories we had and we shared with the wider Jewish community that was there. That was a little funky memories, but we had a great experience because people at Beth Or are just terrific. We don't have a lot of the dynamics you have with other synagogues, you don't have with the small shtibel.
How did that trip parlay into leadership and to creating a positive impact on the community once you returned?
I think that Israel, for me and for the congregation, is always a really important part of our community, and proudly we can say that. And the openness to learn about it, and the classes that we had, and the focus on what Israel was, and what the real story behind the birth and growth of Israel was, and trying to, come from a university environment to a congregational environment, which was, university is a place where you have all the free speech that's totally encouraged and so forth. But there's a lot of speech about Israel that's not positive and not true, and more PR. And we were able to confront a lot of that, and our members knew a lot more about that. Certainly after the trip, during the trip, and in subsequent years as well.
Well, I hope that we'll be able to, maybe organize a trip to Israel for our members sometime in the future. That would be a really great gift, I think, that we could create. Maybe you'll help us plan that with the wisdom that you've acquired from that experience. I'm wondering, when you first started, if you had a particular vision for Beth Or, besides the financial that you recently elaborated on, was there some other more substantive vision that you had, and when you first got there, and did it change over the years?
So I think always the reason to be the spiritual leader of the congregation is to make Jews. And the way you make Jews is you educate them, and you offer as many learning opportunities as possible, so people have, as I always have said, multiple entry points to Jewish life. And so learning became very important. And even I think Rabbi Lillian changed she created a program called Chit Chat for many years. And people gathered at Starbucks and other places and would just gather and just chit and chat. And
I thought that was your program, but I guess you inherited that.
I inherited, but I changed it dramatically because I ended up bringing a text every week because I just couldn't kibitz. And so we would read a text, everybody would share the reading, and then we would have a Jewish conversation based on that. And so learning came from everything that we did. I was really happy to bring my 2-minute sukkah to Beth Or to show people how accessible Sukkot is. By the way, if anybody wants a sukkah, since our future includes moving to Asheville, North Carolina, if anybody wants a sukkah, I have it. And I can consult with you on how to put it up in 2 minutes if you want it in your home, easy to store and so forth. But it's something that, I'm really proud of, because you put it up and you have a race of putting it up with a smile because you're trying to beat the clock, and make it fun. And Judaism is all about having fun. Even the challahs that Mindy and I make, and we still make them every week. I do have to admit the bread machine does the hard work, but we make raisin challah, and I am ever so proud that I was able to raise the sugar content in the recipe by 1 tablespoon.
Nice.
One of my proudest moments. And
yeah,
also using golden raisins. But we made challah, and we did this also at Christ the King with their members and so forth. So, a lot of it is just warming ourselves to Jewish tradition and practice and knowledge and learning, and that's the goal. That's the goal. Did we create a learning community? And I think we did.
Well, thank you.
Continued it. Excuse me.
Good. I'm happy to inherit that that value and that priority, and we need to continue to grow that. But I love that, and I love when you come and join us. So even if you're in North Carolina, I hope you'll be joining us through the magic of Zoom.
Absolutely. Well, and hopefully, God willing, we'll have a better connection because we'll get Verizon.
Oh, nice.
AT&T
we'll
doesn't work
contribute.
there. AT&T doesn't work there. And the people that took Musar knew that this year. Go ahead.
You spoke a lot about how beautiful the community is and how welcoming and warm it is and how learned, and that they, that's a priority that they have set. What do you think is Beth Or's greatest challenge?
So we live in a community that Jewishly has shrunk, and the community in Miami, when we moved here, Mindy and I have been here for 40 years, over 40 years, and we moved here in 1980. The Jewish community is about 250, 260,000 members. Now Broward is that big, and Miami is about 100 and a quarter. And a lot of the people flew after Hurricane Andrew. Some of us rebuilt, even in the house that we're in. And so the challenge is, in a small, shrinking community that has changed dramatically, the ethnic balance has changed dramatically, and so forth. I mean, to the positive, it's an international community where, we get proud of bringing New York restaurants to Miami and so forth. And, because so it has changed in that way. So the challenge now is, how do we in 2021 or 2020 and 2020, 2030, continue the strength that is Beth Or and offer what Beth Or offers to the community. And hopefully, with the opportunities that are available to Beth Or now, with the decision to sell the building and to grow in whichever way, some of the issues about funding may be addressed. Not all of them, but some of them. And so what can be done to sustain this community? And, I look around and see that a lot of the people are the same people that were here. And they tell me, you all have told me from the very beginning. And somehow, how do you expand the reach and offer what the sweetness of what Beth Or is to the Jewish community here? Because I firmly believe there's a place for it.
So do you think that the pandemic has given us an opportunity to one, prioritize, two, to find in a nugget who we are and be able to take it in a different direction? Or do you see what comes out of that we can use moving forward?
Yeah, look, as more of us get the vaccination and wait a couple of weeks, and God willing, we're all protected and we're not spreaders, if we can figure this out, we can be together and hug each other at significant events and be together for holidays and so forth as we need to be. But I have to tell you, going to services in my underwear, no, I don't mean that. No, I don't mean that at all.
Maybe.
Maybe I don't mean that. Zoom is providing another level of opportunities, which, I know Mindy and I took advantage of, from Marilyn Traeger's class to other classes that can be offered and should be offered. And in a lot of ways, we know how to use the electronics now. Hopefully we have good connection. Our 2-year-old granddaughter, almost 2-year-old granddaughter in Washington, D.C., when we get a poor connection, because we do frequently, she says, "Poor connection." Cutest thing I ever heard. But hopefully, without the poor connection, we can really use that opportunity to have many, many more touch points with you all as a community. And I know that Robyn has reached out to me and others in order to do that, because you can't only rely on the current rabbi to do all of the things that are open while we're sitting in our homes waiting to be entertained or engaged.
Luckily, we've had more and more people coming forward to do that, and I think that's been one of the gifts of this pandemic is really empowering people to be those voices and to teach and
Absolutely.
to share and to inspire. So it has been great. And you have been so gracious over the years too. So I hope that that continues even in Nashville, because we need you,
Absolutely.
and we love having your wisdom, and your classes are always so well attended. I know that there's a number of people that want to ask questions, but I just want to ask you a few more. So if anybody's has these burning desire to ask the questions, just hold on for a moment, write them down or keep them in your head, because maybe I'll get to them too. Do you have, what's a standout memory for you? Like when you tell your children that you were a rabbi for 9.5 years at Beth Or, and your grandchildren, what's the first thing that you think about that brings you immense joy and pride?
I think the people, and I think the community that's been created and hopefully sustained, and I know you have sustained it and even expanded it, is that um, it was such a sweet experience. And that's the key memory, is that had I learned about this as a rabbi of a small congregation early on, I may have taken a different direction. Probably not, but it was sweet enough to really just enjoy everybody, and the life cycle events are the most obviously meaningful events, and the sad times as well as the happy times, to be involved and to get to know people, um, and to be in their lives is really something that we rabbis, as you know, Robyn, is that we all want to, we cherish those experiences.
We do, and we will continue to, with you as well. I'm wondering um, if there was, like your proudest achievement, what would that be?
I think the dual aspects of having a significant, serious learning community and sustaining that, and hopefully growing that, as well as the on the business side, is to say, look, let's look at the critical issues and address them. And addressing the first critical issue, I think, I feel good about, because you guys are still here and the synagogue is still standing. And we didn't have to sell the building, in '08, which is, 12, 13 years ago.
Yeah.
We were able to sustain ourselves, and use, I have to mention Michael Henry's creativity also. And, what a great partner. And I know that you feel that, and the whole congregation feels that. And, so, and that relationship with us is still very, very important as well.
Nice. Mark, if you were going to give me some words of wisdom, since you've had an up close, upfront and personal connection with our, continued connection since you turned the baton over to me, what would your words of wisdom be to me, knowing our community, where we are at, knowing the opportunities in front of us, the challenges that we face? What's a kernel of wisdom that you can gift me in this moment?
I think just to keep close to the community as you are, and to listen to the community as I hope I did, and to respond to the real needs, and to understand that, there's so many different interests that people have, and to foster those in a Jewish way, to continue to foster those, and keep doing what you're doing.
Thank
So
you.
it's
Thank you.
awesome.
Thank you. Mark, so I'm going to kind of shift a little bit and ask you just personally, like, what keeps you busy? You're not with AJC anymore, and you're not at Beth Or in a professional capacity. What are you doing with your days?
I really don't know. No, I do. Um, you know, right now we're really busy moving to Asheville. We were asked to dog sit, excuse me, backwards. Um, we were planning to spend before COVID 5 months in Winston-Salem to see what it's like to live there, because two of our kids and their spouses and two of our grandchildren live there. The other grandchild lives in Bethesda with her parents. We wanted to be closer to our kids, which is what I think you need to do. We need to do at this stage in our lives. Um, so we were asked to dog sit with friends, dog in Asheville, and we ended up falling in love with it. We saw our kids, which is 2.25 hours away from Winston, and we fell in love with Asheville, and we saw our kids 5 times, albeit at a distance, not touching. And we're closer to Bethesda as well. So we're preparing the house to sell. That's taken a lot of time. But I'm also still doing some business coaching that I do with the CEOs.
Mhm.
But I'm also volunteering for SCORE for not-for-profits and helping other not-for-profits be strong and kind of learn the lessons that I learned and I teach of how to be a not-for-profit, successful not-for-profit. So a lot of it's getting the house ready to sell. And we feel somewhat guilty because during COVID, we feel like we're on back roads. Don't tell anybody, because we're going kayaking, we're doing biking, we're doing walking, and we're staying away from most people, except for, potting with a few people.
So I
So
was going to say that you're, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. You look so healthy and trim and got great color. So I
thanks.
think
And
COVID's teaching, and Sabahood is keeping you healthy and happy.
it is good. And I've lost about 35 pounds by not eating out.
Amazing.
Yeah, so it's really feels good too. So
And
hopefully,
without the stress of Beth Or,
hopefully you'll
maybe.
see less of me.
Oh, goodness. So have you found a synagogue up in Asheville?
So in Nashville, there's a Reform synagogue, there's a conservative synagogue, a secular group, and a JCC. So we've zoomed over the summer on Shabbat a little bit, and it's very nice to the Reform synagogue. When our connection to Beth Or broke, continues to break up, we're doing some of that. So we're gonna play it by ear and see what we do, see what we like, but there is a significant Jewish community of 5,000 members. I guess it's not so significant, but it's better than Waynesville.
It's wonderful, especially because I know that it won't prohibit or preclude you from staying connected to our Beth Or community. You'll be able to still plug in on Friday nights, I hope, and to stay connected and teach and to be an integral part of our beautiful sacred community. So I may have a few more moments at the end, but I want to just pause and see if there's anybody else who would like to offer comments or questions. I see Annette's hand is up, so we'll let Annette go first.
Well, I just want to share a sort of a fun story about Mark in terms of Beth Or. We're, as everybody knows, we're next door neighbors for many years, and in fact, when Andrew hit, we'd only been in our house a month, and the only people we really knew on the street were the Krams from other activities and so forth. But I had been active in Shirami. Shirami merged with Judea, and I was the last president of Shirami when we merged with Judea after the storm really changed the demographics. And we were with Judea about 10 years. Mark was unaware that we had left Judea for a time. And at that moment, we really weren't, when he came to Beth Or, he did not realize we were no longer members of Judea. Well, anyway, one day I'm talking to a friend. Understand, we literally live next door to each other, right? So I'm talking to another friend who's telling me about Rabbi Kram went to Beth Or. And I looked at her and I went, really? He never said a word. So I marched on over to Mark's house and I said, why didn't you tell me? And he says, well, you belong to another synagogue. I would never consider telling you that. In other words, the ethical, he's very ethical. And you don't raid from one temple to another. And I said, but you didn't realize I don't belong to Judea anymore. We made a decision and I gave him the backstory about why we left. And he said, well, it's a very nice community. Why don't you come to services? And we did, fell in love. The first person that greeted us at the door was Patricia Worth. And it was just such a, the community is so wonderful. And so that's how we ended up. But here we are neighbors, and his ethical nature and what he believes, he would never just try to quote steal me from another temple. And I thought that was very, it says a lot about who he is. And also, Mark, the trip to Israel, the Bridge to the Future was a wonderful thing, and that was amazing what you did. But as far as I'm concerned, our trip to Israel was our second trip, and it was different. The first trip we had a driver take the family around, and then we went with you the second time in a more religious manner. And it was extraordinary. And it's one of my favorite things that we did. And I, just really loved the trip. But anyway, I just had to share that because I thought, people say they're ethical, but if they practice that they're ethical, that means they really are. And I just wanted to tell that story about you.
Thank you. And I did give you Steve's shovel back. So.
Right. You gave me the shovel back. And we raised the tree when you put the car on the other side of the hill.
Right.
Marcy?
I just want to say how much I love you and Mindy. And you know that. I know Mindy's on here too. And I'm both very happy for you that you're going to Asheville and you'll be closer to your kids and you're going to such a great community. I had no idea, but I'm also really sad because I was hoping when COVID was over, we could get together for dinner with you guys. So that's not going to happen, but maybe in Asheville, you never know. And of course, I remember Israel. It was such an amazing time. And I'll never forget when you tried to pull me out of the sand pit.
I won't forget it either.
I know, that was some moment.
And we did pull you out of the mud at the Dead Sea.
That's right.
You're alive because we pulled you out.
That's right. Otherwise, I'd still be in that pit.
Good story, though.
Yeah, so good luck.
Linda Faber said, and we love that Mindy was so involved with Beth Or too. We loved her warmth and friendship and lovely voice in the choir. Norma, were you trying to ask a question?
Well, I'd like to add something.
That would be great.
But I go back when Mark first came. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Because when Mark first came, and it was the first time we had a rabbi every other week. So my question was, what are we going to do when he's not there? We'll have to train some of our own members to take over. So we did. And Mark and I shared that evening. He told what you had to do as a Jew, and I told what you could do as a Reconstructionist. So there were two different viewpoints on how to lead. And that's when we started developing our own members to lead services when the rabbi wasn't there. And because he wasn't there, we took responsibilities for ourselves for the first time. And we felt that that was what was needed. If we had an idea, we brought it up and other people followed if they liked the idea. And we started pioneering certain things because we only had the rabbi half time. And each one of us felt the responsibility of continuing. I remember once there was a question among our members, and it was a question about our Jewish history. And I was shocked that they didn't know the basics of our history. So I offered myself to teach it. And we started with the calendar. And on the calendar, it said, Fast of Gedalia. And I asked them, who is Gedalia? Well, that started it off. It was a political history of Judaism. And we met every Sunday morning. There were 15 people. We had 15 chairs. If you wanted to come, you had to stand in line for a chair. And we met for 2 years. And we used a textbook. And I hope some of it stuck, because now they know their own history. How can you be a Jew without knowing who's who?
Wonderful. Norma, we need more incredible members like you who grab the the chain and keep going with it and really make things happen, and you still do. So we just love and adore you. I know that you were an incredible supporting partner with Rabbi Kram.
And I want to thank, Norma, I want to thank your wisdom, because you helped me convert to Reconstructionist Judaism, which I had to do, and always relying on her wisdom and such a depth of knowledge was just, a real pleasure. So I appreciate that too. And I also want to tip the kippah to all the presidents I worked with, from Michael Newman to Shep to Mel, and just great experiences, great wisdom, and a lot added to it. So it was really very, very important.
Yes, we opened up the world, the rest of the world, to our own temple. We broadened their knowledge. We adopted a family in Belarus, and we kept it up for a few years to help them with their rent and their medicines. And every month I would write out what we had done for this family in Mogilev. And then we adopted a woman in Nigeria. We paid for her upkeep for a year. This was broadening their knowledge by doing something for them.
Thank you, Norma. I know that there's a bunch of people who have some questions. Janie?
Thank you for letting me talk.
Oh, of course, we love hearing you.
I say ditto to all the comments. As a participant in Torah study and so many wonderful workshops that Rabbi Kram presented us with, I so fondly remember during Torah study, Mark, you being able to elicit participation by everyone. You have this wonderful gift of inclusivity and facilitation that I so appreciated during Torah study and the many workshops, including Musar and so many others. And I thank you for that. And I'm going to miss you, and maybe I'm going to see you in Nashville someday.
Yes, you will. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, so I'm going to, we'll kind of close off our time here, Mark, but I know it feels like a little going away party for you. But I know it's not goodbye. It's a little lahitraot, if you will, a little see you later, and not even later, because we get to continue to share life with each other through the magic of this platform and through Zoom. I hope and pray that you and Mindy on your journey experience strength and new growth and wisdom and opportunities and a new lease on life with your grandchildren and your children. And we all pray for you, for the two of you, that you continue to go from strength to strength. You are a blessing to us. And even though you are leaving the geographic area of Miami, I know that you will always remain close to our hearts, close to each of us. and your legacy will always be a part of who we are and how we go forward. I'm just about to kind of close this off, but I think that Carol, I think, has a question. So
I
we'll
think
pipe in.
Mel has a hand up too.
Okay, so you guys got to jump in and
Right.
let's go, Carol. Okay.
It's very brief. I just wanted to thank you, Rabbi Mark, because you're the rabbi who brought me back into Judaism after many, many decades of not identifying with my Jewish heritage, and it will be with me for the rest of my life. And my mother, who most of you knew, was the reason I was looking for a Jewish community for her, and I found one for myself with Beth Or and with you, Rabbi Mark. And my mother was kind of a hypercritical person. I don't know if you all knew that about her, but one of the things that I, in my whole lifetime, that I can remember that she was not critical about was my finding you, Rabbi Mark, and Beth Or. She thought it was a really good thing that I found you and the community. So I wanted to thank you for that.
And I'm fortunate to have known her too, especially on visit with you and your brother with her.
Thank
So,
you.
so during my first tenure as president at Beth Or, I had the privilege of working side by side with Mark for 3 of those 5 years. And I've known Mark, as Amy has known Mark and his family, for a long time before that. But it was such a great partnership, and I learned so much from Mark. And I just want to remind everyone that Mark is our Rabbi Emeritus and will always be our Rabbi Emeritus. And it was with great honor that we named you that, because of so much that you gave to Beth Or, from Bridge to the Future. And as Janie so beautifully said, just how you facilitate services, that one-on-one connection. And we will always have a special place for you and Mindy in our hearts at Beth Or.
Likewise to you and Amy. Many don't know, but Amy taught all 3 of our kids.
Nice.
And it was also a huge pleasure, and I'm so honored that you stepped up again to be the president of Beth Or again. And, you know, what a powerful leader. Thanks.
Yes, Mindy.
Unmute. Okay. I'm not someone that does a lot of public speaking, but I can't help but just want to say how much I love this community. I'm going to start crying because I feel like I'm leaving, but you're all amazing people. And I think the Beth Or experience really did renew my feeling about Jewish community. And even though I'm very much a behind the scenes person, you know, Mark's always been in the front. That's just my style. Even at Hillel, I worked for him and he could be my boss at work. And I did what, you know, but I wanted to share a memory that I had when Mark was at Beth Am. And at one point he was there by himself. And I went to high holiday services with the kids, and we got there a little later in the afternoon, and we were sitting in the very far back. You know, they would open up the auditorium and have the big screen, and I sat down with the kids. And I remember looking around the whole, you know, where I was sitting. I didn't recognize a single person. And we had been in that congregation for 25 years. And it was the contrast of being at Beth Or just doing this Zoom and knowing everybody on this Zoom, or at every high holidays feeling a connection with everybody. And that to me is what makes Beth Or such a special place. It's a connection of really knowing people and feeling a part of each other's lives. So I want to thank you too for giving me wonderful memories and wonderful relationships. And we'll be back to Miami, and I'm sure we'll make our way to Beth Or when we do. So thanks,
Yeah,
everyone.
just remember there's winter in Asheville. I'm not crazy about winter. We'll be back.
You have a place always here with us. Rabbi Mark Kram, Mindy Kram, we love you. We wish you well. I stand on your very strong shoulders, and I look to you for your wisdom and your support always. I'm grateful for you bringing me here. We are all grateful as a community for what you gave to us and what we continue to draw from. You are a gift, and we are blessed. May you also be blessed on your journey. God bless, my
Thank
friends.
you.